Welcome everyone to the webinar on Inclusive Career Pathways Roadmap, Navigating the Road to Employment and Economic Self-Sufficiency. Just for some housekeeping details, for listening to the webinar, the audio for today's webinar is being broadcast through your computer. Please make sure your speakers are turned on or your headphones are plugged in. You can control the audio broadcast via the audio broadcast panel. If you accidentally close the panel, you can reopen it by going to the Communicate menu at the top of the screen and choosing Join Audio Broadcast. And there's a little picture of it below. If you don't have sound capabilities on your computer or prefer to listen by phone, please dial 1-415-655-0001. The meeting code is 661-530-186, and you won't need to enter an ID number. Real-time captioning is provided during this webinar. Captions can be found in the Media Viewer panel, which appears in the lower right corner of the webinar platform. If you want to make the Media Viewer panel larger, you can minimize other panels like chat, Q&A, and/or participants. We hope to have some time at the end for questions, but we have a lot of content to cover. So please, as we're going through, we encourage you to use the chat box or the Q&A box to send any questions you have during the webinar. If we do run out of time and you want individual response, please provide us with your contact information and we'll do that. If you're listening by phone or not logged in to the computer, you may also ask questions by emailing questions to Al Miliotto at his email address is amilioto@ndi-inc.org. Please note that the webinar is being recorded and the materials will be placed on the Lead Center website at the link provided. If you experience any technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the chat box to send a message to the host, Al Miliotto, or email him at amilioto@ndi-inc.org. And now we're ready to start our webinar on our new Inclusive Career Pathways Roadmap, Navigating the Road to Employment and Economic Self-Sufficiency. I am your moderator. I'm Rebecca Salon, Project Director of the Lead Center. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Lead Center, we are the National Center on Leadership for the Employment and Economic Advancement of People with Disabilities. We're a collaborative of disability, workforce, and economic empowerment organizations led by National Disability Institute with funding from the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy. And our mission is to advance sustainable individual and systems level change that results in improved, competitive, integrated employment and economic self-sufficiency outcomes for people across the spectrum of disabilities. I would very much like to welcome Chris Button to make some opening remarks. Chris is the Supervisor for Workforce Systems Policy at the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy. Chris? Oh, and I just got a message that Chris was disconnected, so she's about to call in again. We will watch for that to happen so that we can turn it over to her. But in the interim, we want to share with you the new roadmap. So if you just give me a moment to open it up. And if someone else can let me know, or if Chris can just speak up when she's online. We can turn it back to her.
Hey, I'm back.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Sincere apologies. I don't know what happened. I just got disconnected, but called right back in. So thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you to all of the LEAD staff. I know how hard you have been working, not just on pulling together this amazing roadmap, but on pulling together all the various pieces for this webinar today that's going to share it and unveil it to the world. On behalf of the Office of Disability Employment Policy, on behalf of our boss, Deputy Assistant Secretary Jennifer Sheehy, on behalf of the Department of Labor as a whole.
Oh, no. I think we may have, Chris, you're cutting out.
Okay, all of the attendees. Let me see if I can move over here. Is this better?
Yes.
Is this better? So LEAD Center has been working with ODEP for over 5 years now, pulling together a range of different activities and developing tools and resources to assist people with disabilities into employment, to make sure that the systems that are there to help them are working together in a way that's what this roadmap does is really bring together a lot of the information that they've been able to pull together over the last period of working here. The Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act is intended to align many programs across a myriad of different systems. It can sometimes be challenging because there's so much to read and so much to learn and so many different systems that have to be aligned. And this roadmap, I think, is a wonderful step in helping people to begin to understand how everything can really work together, not just for the individual job seeker, but for people in all of those systems who are looking for information.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Chris. We appreciate that. And we'll get to hear from you again in a little while. So it's Rebecca Salon again. We're very excited to launch this Inclusive Career Pathways Roadmap, which we believe will be a useful tool to promote collaboration across career pathways partners in workforce programs, vocational rehabilitation, adult career and technical education, and other career pathways partners. And I want to share a bit, in addition to what Chris shared, about why we developed this roadmap. As our team at the LEAD Center worked with a variety of partners, they identified the need for tools to assist practitioners, career pathways partners, and other workforce development professionals in making their programs accessible to people with disabilities and others who experience barriers to employment, and to assist them in building productive partnerships with other WIOA partners, with employers, with community agencies, and so on. So for the past several years, the LEAD Center staff have focused on learning about and supporting programs to successfully serve youth and adults with barriers to employment. And as we work with partners at American Job Centers and vocational rehabilitation, adult and continuing education, community colleges, community employment providers in the behavioral health and developmental disabilities arenas, Centers for Independent Living, lots of different partners, they identified and we identified the information that people might need to make inclusion work. And all of us at the LEAD Center have worked for most of our careers in the field. So we know how precious time is when you're actually working face-to-face with people, and the fact that there's just an overwhelming number of resources out there. So we wanted to create a tool that would narrow the choices a bit and could still guide people to useful resources, examples of promising practices, and other useful information that workforce professionals, regardless of where they work, could use. And as you can see on your screen, we envisioned a career pathway as a road with a destination and created a roadmap to depict that. So we kind of ran with that metaphor. So as you see on the screen, there are traffic circles, roundabouts, that take you places, and then put you back onto the career pathway, back onto the road. And each traffic circle has a driver, so that the thing that would drive someone into a inclusive career pathway that could lead them to a destination. And the drivers are all topic areas that emerged as we work with states on their systems change effort and as they develop promising practices. So as you can see, the drivers are employer connections, youth with disabilities, partnerships, accessibility, and capacity building. So those are the areas that people identified and that our work identified as really being important for driving inclusive career pathways. What you're seeing is a roadmap that went live today, so it's really brand new. For those of you who are familiar with our website, we've always had these areas at the top that have been our areas of focus during our 6 years. So the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, customized employment, financial literacy and capability, and cross-systems collaboration. So the green Road to Inclusive Career Pathways is a new area on the Lead Center website that when you're done with the webinar, you'll be able to go to our website and access on your own. So we're very excited about this. And we want to just walk you through the roadmap so that you'll know what you can find under the different sections. But then more importantly, you'll hear from people who helped us develop it, people from the Office of Disability Employment Policy, from the Employment and Training Administration, leaders from workforce systems in California and Illinois, the program manager of the Disability Employment Initiative Technical Assistance Team, a colleague from the Rehabilitation Services Administration at the U.S. Department of Education who oversees the career pathways for individuals with disabilities, model demonstrations. All of those people will talk about the ways that you can actually use the roadmap, and they'll walk you through pieces of it from their perspective to advance employment outcomes. So back to the roadmap. So each of these destinations, each of these drivers has 4 or 5 off-ramps, 4 or 5 destinations that we'll go into detail with in a moment. And all of the destinations lead to the outcome of employment and economic self-sufficiency. So we felt that that was important as something visually to be able to remind us that that's why we're doing this. There also are 2 billboards, roadside assistance billboards, to give you additional information in addition to what you'll find in the traffic circles. So if you click on Need Technical Assistance, it opens up a page that says looking for training, technical assistance, resources, and training guides, and it takes you to the Lead Center's Knowledge Translation Consortium page. So for the past several years, we've had, I guess since the Lead Center started in 2012, we've convened a knowledge translation consortium that right now I think has 26 federally funded training and technical assistance centers that all have their own unique mission focused on disability and employment. So it's a one-stop place that you can go to for resources from the many, many projects that are being funded by the federal government. So that's one of the features of this. The other roadside assistance sign says, want to drive change? And that billboard provides you with information about implementation science. And we've been very excited about implementation science for the past couple of years. So the National Implementation Research Network is an organization that studied the science of implementation, organization change, and system reinvention to improve outcomes in human services for the past several decades. And their findings have shown that there's a right way to go about implementation, and that when the drivers of change are focused on and attended to, and the work is done in the right sequence, there's a greater likelihood of successful implementation. So we wanted to provide you with information on the science of what makes for good implementation and good systems change. So what you'll find under this is a one-pager that just describes what implementation science is, a two-page description that goes into the drivers and stages of implementation, talks about competency drivers, organization drivers, and leadership drivers, and then a PowerPoint presentation that kind of goes into a little more depth about what implementation science might have to offer you as you're working to implement inclusive career pathways programs. So I very quickly want to just show you what you'll find when you click on these circles. And as with any good map, there's a map key. So if you click on the map key, it tells you what you'll find under each area. And I fear that this looks very small on your screens. You might be able to close some of the side things that are showing up that show the participants and other things that'll enlarge the image. But as you click on each driver and decide that you want to take one of the off-ramps, you'll find 4 different areas of information. One is a set of questions that you can ask yourself or bring to your team to determine if you're effectively implementing that key element of inclusive career pathways. The second area is actions that are recommended that a state or local area can take, an individual can take, a team can take to learn more about how this driver can positively impact employment for people who face barriers to employment. There's also a set of examples under each area. So things that we've learned from our work in different parts of the country, promising practices, and you'll hear from some of the speakers today who've contributed some of those promising practices. And then there's a set of resources. And again, we know that there are an overwhelming amount of resources out there, so we really tried to give you our favorites. We tried to give you, instead of giving you the 100 resources that are available, we tried to give you the 6 resources or the 10 resources that we thought you might find to be the most useful. So under employer connections, you'll find an off-ramp about apprenticeships, on-the-job training, and work-based learning. And again, in that area, you'll find information that gives you questions to ask yourself, actions you can take, examples, and resources. There's another on benefits to employers and return on investment related to employer connections, coordination between systems, and diverse and reverse career fairs. So those are the 4 offerings where you can get that information if you're interested in that area. Under youth with disabilities, we have a section on financial literacy, which is a requirement under WIOA, guideposts for success, which has long been a best practice in the field, partnerships specifically related to youth, and work-based learning. Under partnerships, there's a section on co-enrollment and integrated resource teams, a really important area, and you'll hear a little more about that today. Cross-system and cross-title activities, resource coordination, and veterans employment. So those are the 4 areas under partnerships. Accessibility has a section on accommodations, on American Job Center certification, again, through the lens of how to make that inclusive, how to do that in partnership, a section on assistive technology, and another on the WIOA Section 188 Disability Reference Guide that has a lot of good information related to creating equal opportunity in the workforce system. And the final area is capacity building, and there you'll find a section on customized employment, another on promising practices, an area on targeted technical assistance, and another on work incentives and benefits planning. So those are the areas that you'll be able to find information in. So I just want to click on one quickly to show you a few things. As you can see, it starts, this is the under employer connections, this is the diverse and reverse career fairs. So there's 2 questions. Do AJCs host job fairs, recruitment events that proactively promote that are proactively promoted to disability partners and people with disabilities? Do agencies join and collaborate on offering diversity fairs and other job fairs that promote qualified individuals with disabilities? There's an action, there's a set of examples that are part of that link, and then there are a number of links to resources that you can go to that would show you what Connecticut has done with diverse ability career fairs, or where you can get real hands-on examples of how people are doing things that are making their career pathways programs more accessible. I want to point out before I leave this page that the sidebar here will take you to any of the places on the roadmap, so you don't have to click back on the bar at the top. If you wanted to go from this to someplace else under Employer Connections, you can just click that. If you wanted to switch to capacity building, you can do that as well, or you can go to one of the roadside assistance places. So it allows you to move around pretty easily. It's been set up so that it will work on any device and any browser. So you can pull this up on your handheld device and access those resources. It works on tablets, it works on Mac, it works on any kind of platform, so that we're excited about that. If you pull it up on your handheld, it will look more like the sidebar on the side. It would be much more linear because it would be difficult to have it look the way it does on the home page. Since it's new and we're just launching it, as you experiment with it yourself, we'd be very happy to hear from you, to hear what you find useful, see if there are things that you think are missing that that we should be paying more attention to. So we'd appreciate hearing back from you. But I now want to move to our panel because they have just wonderful information to offer. So I am going to what I want to do. I may need assistance getting back to the PowerPoint. There we go. Thank you so very much. That's great. So here's our picture of the roadmap. So I wanted to introduce all of the speakers that you're going to hear from today, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jamie Robinson, who's going to facilitate a discussion with people in the field after we hear from Sarah Hastings. So Sarah Hastings is going to be our first speaker. Sarah is the unit chief with the Youth Policy and Performance Unit at the Employment and Training Administration at the U.S. Department of Labor. Let me just quickly introduce our other speakers, and then we'll go back to Sarah. So from California, we have Michelle Ockham, Manager of Workforce Development for the Sacramento Employment and Training Agency, and Jennifer Fisher, Workforce Development Analyst Supervisor and Disability Resource Coordinator, also with the Sacramento Employment and Training Agency. We have Pepper Creamkin, Disability Service Manager, Business and Career Services, Inc., with the North Suburban Cook County American Job Center in Arlington Heights, Illinois. We have Laura Glenick, Project Manager for the Disability Employment Initiative Technical Assistance Team at National Disability Institute. Jamie Robinson, who's the Manager of Financial Empowerment and Workforce for the LEAD Center, is going to facilitate the discussion with the people that I just introduced. And we're going to end with a discussion from Felipe Lule, who's Project Officer for Career Pathways for Individuals with Disabilities at the Rehabilitation Services Administration at the U.S. Department of Education. So, so we're going to go back and start with Sarah to have her talk about her work in career pathways. Sarah chairs federal interagency work group on career pathways, has been instrumental in developing wonderful materials and has been a great partner in our developing this roadmap. So if I can turn it over to Sarah.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thanks, Rebecca, and hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here today to talk a little bit about sort of career pathways and where we are kind of today as it relates to the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act and the technical assistance resources that we have developed kind of as a field, as a group, as the interagency working group and the federal agencies that have been working on career pathways for many, many years. And now today we have this exciting new resource that I think is going to be very valuable to folks and really fits in with sort of the broader framework of how we think about career pathways, not only career pathway programs, but system development and what needs to happen, the conversations that need to happen, the coordination and the collaboration that needs to happen in order to really provide substantive and awesome career pathway opportunities for folks, including those with disabilities. So thank you for inviting me to kind of reflect on the roadmap. Just to kind of give folks a little bit of a kind of a reminder of where we're at with career pathways. I mean, we have been talking about career pathways, I think probably as everybody on this call knows, for many, many years. It's been at least 10 years that we've really been engaged in sort of this discussion around what are career pathways, how do we talk about them. And with the passage of the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act in 2014, we went from really sort of a hodgepodge of ways of thinking about career pathways. People were defining it differently. There were lots of different elements that were similar maybe across the country, but we didn't have anything to kind of bring us together as we talked about career pathways. And when the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act passed, there was included in that legislation a definition for career pathways, which really, it codified it in legislation and really allowed all of the folks, training providers, the workforce development system, education and training providers, folks who work with folks with disabilities, really the whole system, bringing them together and sort of connecting around this definition of career pathways. We talk about career pathways and have even prior to WIOA, but now definitely with the passage of WIOA, about career pathways programs, and we also talk about career pathway systems. And so we, as an interagency group, which I should say includes the Department of Labor, Department of Education, both OCTAE, or Office of Career and Technical and Adult Education, as well as RSA, the Rehabilitative Services Administration, and the Department of Health and Human Services, along with, and the interagency working group is made up of about 13 federal agencies, the Social Security Administration, Department of Transportation, we've got Department of Defense, we have the Department of Commerce. We've got lots of different federal agencies that are engaged in this conversation, both kind of on the supply side as well as the demand side. So what does industry need? And so when we talk about career pathway system building, we talk about the importance of understanding all the pieces that need to be in place in order for this programming and the service delivery of folks to work. And so we talk about six key elements to career pathways, which include building cross-agency partnerships, identifying industry sectors and engaging employers, and then designing education and training programs, which is really the programmatic piece of career pathway systems. What do you need to have in place to make those career pathway programs work? Thinking about identifying funding needs and sources, thinking about aligning policies and programs, and what do states and local areas really need to do to bring all of WIOA partners together, your Title I, your Title II, your Title III, your Title IV, your other partners that include your TANF partners, HUD partners, kind of all of us that are in this work together. How do we think about aligning those policies and programs? And then how do we measure those systems, know that we're getting there? How do we do that collaboratively and across the board? We know WIOA requires the common measures and definitions, performance measures. So we're all on the same page. So those are sort of these 6 key elements around career pathways. And if you look at our roadmap that Rebecca just walked us through, you know that many of those pieces, those elements are included throughout the roadmap, sort of the partnership requirements. What does it take to really bring the right folks together? Thank you. The employer connections, that's your sector strategies. That is sort of the demand side. What do folks need? What do employers really need? And how do we prepare folks to be the skilled workers that employers need? Capacity building here, what does it really take to make all of this come together? It is not just about getting together at the table and having these important conversations about career pathways, but then what does the implementation look like? I love your implementation drivers, the want to drive change. I think those resources are really, really critical. And then your partnerships piece that has, you know, your co-enrollment strategies. What does that look like? So, you know, in looking at the roadmap, I think this really fits with how we've talked about career pathways, the 6 key elements of career pathways, and how the federal agencies are really trying to come together to have kind of similar language as we talk about providing career pathways opportunities for everyone, including those with disabilities. And then, you know, this takes it that next step. The roadmap does, and it really helps folks at the state and local level dig into how do we make this work, how are we inclusive with our career pathway strategies. And so I think the resources here are really critical. I know we're excited at the Department of Labor as well as Education and HHS to get the word out about this resource, and we will share it with our interagency working group folks so that they can get it out to their stakeholders, and so we'll be able to reach a lot of folks there. And I think I've addressed the things that I needed to address. We know that career pathways requires a ton of collaborative efforts, and having a resource like this that really gives guiding questions where people sit down together to think through career pathways is going to be helpful. Also included in this roadmap throughout, I think there's a few different places where the Career Pathways Toolkit, an enhanced guide and workbook for career pathways system building is included as a resource, and that's something that the interagency working group helped pull together. There are additional resources that are similar where, you know, if you're wanting to work with your employers and think strategically about how to engage them and how to have them be part of your system building, there are some guiding questions, and there are tools that you can use to do that. And I think this roadmap is very similar in that it sort of walks you through and provides you some really good guiding questions, and then provides additional resources. So the Career Pathways Toolkit is a resource included in the roadmap, but it's also a similar sort of organization in the sense that it provides guiding questions and then also some helpful resources. What I love about this roadmap is that it doesn't give you 1 bazillion resources, but it gives you a handful. We probably needed to do that in our Career Pathways Toolkit because we have lots and lots and lots of resources, and I think that can be overwhelming to folks. But having a handful that are really sort of the strongest, the best out there is going to be really helpful. So I will leave it at that, but those are my thoughts around the roadmap. We're excited to get this out to the field, and so thank you for asking me to kind of reflect on this new tool, but we're excited about it. So I'll turn it back to Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was really useful to get that bigger context and to hear the ways that you think that people can use it. And yes, there are a couple places under resources that the Career Pathways Toolkit that you and the Interagency Working Group on Career Pathways developed, that people would be able to access it. So we appreciate you taking the time to do that. And I would now like to turn it over to Jamie Robinson and the panel of amazing people that she's pulled together to really talk about what they've contributed to the roadmap, as well as ways that they can see using it going forward. So, Jamie?
Great, thanks, Rebecca, and also thank you to Sarah for that. Excellent. So before we start the Q&A, I want to give a little bit more background on how we gathered this content that's in the roadmap. The major roadways and the subdrivers basically all represent the overarching recurrent themes and elements that promote inclusive career pathways, collected from a variety of states, local regions, nationwide. A series of interviews were conducted by us at LEAD, the LEAD Center, with a variety of leadership, staff, partners from workforce development, VR, the Disability Employment Initiative, or DEI. And in our national TA work between the LEAD Center as well as the Disability Employment Initiative Center, we were able to kind of identify what are those regions that have developed strong working partnerships, they've implemented effective strategies in serving people with disabilities, and they're also creating inclusive career pathways and have positive employment outcomes to show. And then additional strategies and examples and promising practices, and also the ongoing challenges in each of the regions, as well as kind of other strategies that have been documented nationally, are included in the roadmap, which is really designed to support WIOA system partners, all partners that Sarah mentioned, in navigating and implementing inclusive career pathways. And today, I'm really excited to have some of the individuals who contributed to this roadmap. And what was really interesting through this process of talking with a lot of different state and local regions and all across the country, although representatives that had all different kind of perspectives, many of them hit, if not most of them, hit on these certain themes or particular approaches that were essential to creating and opening up opportunities around accessibility, capacity building, employer connections, partnerships, and youth. So you'll see that these are the areas on the roadmap, and that these were the areas, as well as the subdrivers, that consistently rose to the top as kind of key drivers of change. So with that, let's bring up the roadmap again, and I'm going to turn to our first panel member, Michelle from California, and I'm wondering from more regional and also leadership perspective from you, Michelle, when you first had the opportunity to see this, after the series of interviews and the times we spent together, and you had time to explore this a little bit more, what was your initial reaction? How would you envision it might be used by SETA in your workforce system or in other partner systems? And then also a part 3 to that is, where would you start? Where would you recommend somebody start on this roadmap? Michelle?
Okay, so I'll kind of break down the different sections. So you talked about kind of, and by the way, I'm excited, just as Sarah mentioned, excited to be on the webinar today. Sacramento Works, Sacramento Employment and Training Agency, very honored to be a part of this project. I never knew it would really lead to this web-based tool. The final product is amazing. So what's really interesting is there's the capacity building piece, which I'll get to in a moment, but just looking at it as a useful tool, it's not only going to be extremely useful and effective in helping workforce professionals assist individuals with disabilities to navigate career pathways, but it can also, from a regional and managerial level, it can also help in driving and implementing local and regional workforce strategies, which call for expanding partnerships with programs that serve individuals with disabilities. And in California in particular, our workforce board has called for workforce areas to really start focusing on services to individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities. Also, kind of at that regional and managerial level, this tool can really help assist local workforce areas in ensuring compliance with WIOA, Section 188, which is the Equal Opportunity and Non-Discrimination requirements under the law. And in California, and I imagine across the nation, AJCs, America's Job Centers, must go through a certification. And part of that certification is ensuring that there is equal access, both physical and programmatic, to services by individuals with disabilities, including programs leading to career pathways. So you can see where here's a tool that in practice can be utilized for helping individuals to navigate career pathways in an inclusive way, but it also can help to meet some of the mandates of the workforce development area that are required. Principles and concepts are universal in this tool, which was really exciting to see. So what we're looking at is possible application of this tool for youth programs, not necessarily just youth with disabilities, but veterans, reentry, English language learner populations as well. Partners and resources may look a little bit different and may be unique to each population, but same principles and concepts can be found in this web-based tool, can be applied in practice to serve other populations. So we'll be exploring that within our region and our workforce development area. Your question regarding when I first had a chance to review and explore the roadmap, what was the reaction? Amazing, really exciting. As I mentioned, participating in this was really exciting. The interview process and that phase of it, we never knew what the final product was going to look like. Seeing that it is a roadmap concept, it's really beautiful in that it really does promote discovery, which can be fun and engaging for different types of learners. Visually and practically appealing to the user. It's not cluttered. The mere structure of the guided tool, like defined road signs, makes for a real clear, comprehensive learning tool that is somewhat intuitive and pretty easy to navigate, which from a manager level or leadership role will really make it that much easier to implement system-wide. Each road sign is perfect in that it offers food for thought questions, the suggested actions and examples for practical application, as well as links to numerous helpful resources. It really does guide you. So when we talk about a training guide, this is top-notch. And what's wonderful is that this is just going live today. So I'm sure that there'll be little refining of the tool as we move along. It definitely is a learning tool that can be used by all practitioners within the workforce development field, including leadership, the workforce professionals, stakeholders, and really helping all of us to become more comfortable in serving individuals with disabilities, and in particular exploring inclusive career pathways for those folks we serve. One of the other points you asked me is how do you envision the tool may be used by SETA or other partners within our system? Well, we're going to be spreading the word and sharing the wealth, sharing with practice and partners through whatever means possible, which could be convening regional and local focus group meetings, work group meetings, just to get the information out, which will help facilitate action planning. It will promote the aligning of policies, systems, and processes and services. And I know we all do these things already, but I think this is really going to help expand those efforts. This also assists with cross-training of partner staff. So I could see utilizing this tool to assist in cultivating and expanding those partnerships and relationships, as well as building cross-system capacity within the system to serve individuals with disabilities, and that's with our partner agencies. This tool also can help to minimize service fragmentation and increase the streamlining of resources and support to clients in support of client successes, just by the fact that within this roadmap, it gives you the food for thought. It inspires you to ask the questions. It gives you examples of action to take. We really are and promote a centralized service delivery model here in Sacramento, which supports a no wrong door approach to service access. Again, I think this tool is going to be really helpful in promoting that. It provides practical resource for improving and promoting equal opportunity system-wide, and when I say system-wide, also within our 9-county region, because there are 3 other workforce development areas within our region, which is called the Capital Area Region. So once we're comfortable, Jennifer and I, with us learning how to navigate and fully understand and have knowledge of the site, we plan to conduct a guided navigation of the site with our disability services team during our next quarterly focus group meeting. And we've already started exploring and discussing the integration of the tool within other training curriculums, such as our integrated resource team curriculum. Wheels are turning in determining training approaches and ensuring teams actually apply what is learned to promote and increase inclusive career pathways, and not just provide a certificate for them to put in their resume. Since the website highlights best practices from the field, if utilized in a group setting, which we plan on doing, we can see a unique opportunity for workforce professionals to support one another in that learning from the tool and from each other, and kind of promote a peer-to-peer mentorship, if you will. Mm-hmm. We're also planning on promoting and pushing this tool out to our CAS, Capital Adult Innovation Zone, and which is the region's training team made up of representatives from our 9-county region, so that they're aware and can help further get the word out, so that Jennifer and I aren't necessarily having to be connected to each and every training. That can be something that can be replicated and scaled. And finally, sharing with the California Workforce Association, which is the membership organization of all 46 workforce development areas in the state. It is also the TA consultant for the Governor's California Workforce Development Board, and they have been extremely effective and supportive in pushing and promoting disability initiatives, services, resources, partnerships, and trainings at that state level, which has made a ton of difference. And then finally, and I'll wrap it, hopefully I'm not over my 5 minutes, where would you recommend others to start on the roadmap? Everybody's going to be in a little bit different situation. If you haven't had the opportunity to receive targeted funding like Disability Employment Initiative, you may be at some initial stages. So where are you at? Assessing where you are as a workforce area and region in terms of your current capacity and service delivery structure and serving individuals with disabilities would be the first step. Maybe clicking on the capacity building sign and ask yourself the questions, answer the questions that are being asked to kind of conduct a self-assessment to get a general sense of where you are. You know, in some cases, this is a tool that workforce development areas, because of a lot of experience, a lot of capacity building, they're going to be able to jump right in and begin to implement this tool system-wide. Or, like I said, you can have individuals who haven't had that opportunity who may, just have to begin to start with baby steps. Professional development, operational and resource needs must be addressed when implementing inclusive career pathways, and I think that this tool absolutely can help.
Michelle, thank you. You have given us so many tips, really great ideas on how other states can use the tool. And, I just want to thank you and many of you probably out there listening who also contributed today. But thanks so much, Michelle, for all of that. Just lots of ideas for.
Can I share one final thought?
Sure.
Key is don't be afraid to jump in and implement, no matter how small that initial step may be for your workforce development area. If you're not testing and trying and tripping, you're not going to learn.
Well,
so don't be afraid.
Yep, and actually that's in want to drive change roadside assistance. That's a big theme, so you just hit on that one too. Awesome. Well, let's look at some of these roadways and go down some of these roadways, and I think we'll start off with maybe the most essential roadway to inclusive career pathways, because it really intersects with all of the others. Let's go to partnerships, and I'll turn to our panel member from Illinois, Pepper, who has been a disability service manager for about 15 years now with the Arlington Heights, Illinois workforce system. She actually started as part of the Disability Navigator grant. Some of you out there might have remembered this long ago, and she became such an asset to the system. Her position was maintained, and she's now, incredible resource around accessibility in her region. Pepper, can you share a subtopic under partnerships that kind of stands out for you in terms of being a key driver of inclusive career pathways, and why?
Okay, the topic that stands out the most for me is resource coordination. Under partnerships, the topic, it goes straight to the heart of things, but I would like to stress, let's say, 3 points. The first would be diverse contacts leads to power and or strength, both for you as well as for the customer. The more connections you have, the better the possibility you will be able to assist the customer. This falls within the realms of thinking outside the box. You never know from what direction you will need help to assist the customer. So just like they connect to you, you are connected to them. Second is coordinated efforts. This could actually mimic an integrated resource team based on the diverse collection of contacts. Bottom line is building strong relationships and knowing what resources there are in a community. This gives you a strong advantage in being able to assist your customers. Third would be the blending and braiding of funds. Joint effort can and does produce successful outcomes. The bottom line and goal is to help your customers reach positive outcomes, and sometimes that will mean getting others involved. An example or a prime example of resource coordination was, for me, putting together a career exploration day that was it was like a short notice project that had a 3-week turnaround. The project was to create a mock job fair for youth with disabilities that had all the components of a real job fair. So we had employers, we had opening and closing speeches, we had interviews with employers, passport for employer signatures, employers discussion panel on the world of employment. We had lunch for them, and we had gifts. Community resources that needed to be used in order to pull this event off was like Illinois State Representative Michelle Mussman, Vocational Rehabilitation, Oakton Community College, Hyatt Regency Hotel, the Illinois Department of Security, National ABLE, Business and Career Services, their marketing division. We utilize their system to e-blast out to employers to get participation. I did radio interviews as well as press releases. We had Jewish Vocational Services, which is an agency that's dedicated to working with individuals with disability. We had CAPTIONING, and we had the individual over school districts in the area. The basic outcome of these resource connections was the number of students that we ended up in attendance was 71, which we thought was very good. We had disability counselors in attendance. It was about 22 of them. We had employers that was there with 17, and the discussion panel that we had for lunch was 5. This program was a resounding success, and I found that there is no wrong door to knock on when you are building community relationships.
Oh, I love that. That's great. I mean, you can't underestimate the importance of developing relationships, and listening to you also, Peppa, reminded me, and all of the people that we talked to, all of the states systems, all of the local, regional, being proactive around employment and around accessibility was a huge, huge piece of the puzzle. Thank you for that. I'm going to stay on partnership for one more sub-driver, and I'm going to turn to Jennifer in California. Can you share another sub-driver in partnership for us?
Hi, Jamie. Yes, I'm going to talk about integrated resource teams and co-enrollment under the partnerships driver. And I want to look at the first two questions. Do AJCs convene integrated resource teams and or have a process for co-enrolling customers with disabilities? And then do AJCs actively partner with diverse service systems to serve customers in with multiple service and support needs? In Sacramento, the answer to both questions is yes. We look at integrated resource teams as a concrete way to assist people with or without disabilities that may have multiple barriers to obtaining employment. The reason for that is that IRTs are one of the key tools for universal access. Pulling in additional resources may be needed to provide the same level of access to services as individuals without disabilities receive. Some of the partners that can be brought to the table offer resources and supports that are not traditionally provided in a job center. Common partners that we work with here in Sacramento are vocational rehabilitation, regional centers, and supported employment providers. But each participant will have a different combination of service needs, so flexibility is key, especially keeping in mind that disability is just one characteristic of each participant. They could also be a veteran, an English language learner, or an ex-offender, or part of any other priority service population under WIOA. As a result, there are any number of partners that can be a part of the IRT based on the assessed needs of each individual client. As Pepper was talking about, crucial to an IRT is well-developed mutual partnerships because new partners might be hesitant to co-enroll, thinking that co-enrollment is a duplication of service. That's why it's important to map out the service plan for each client so that you and your partners can see what each of you brings to the table, including resources, services, funding, et cetera, and to dispel myths about duplication of service. I just wanted to talk about one example of how an IRT can work to produce better outcomes for a participant, the participant being the primary member of the IRT. So at a meeting and cross-training with a new program partner who is an employment service provider in our area, serving individuals with developmental disabilities, the provider noted having difficulty placing a client in employment. Not only was the individual someone with a developmental disability, but is also a refugee, as we have a high refugee population here in Sacramento. The provider indicated that while they had the knowledge and resources to address the barriers that were related to his developmental disability, there were some acculturation barriers that were preventing him from getting placed in employment. So as the SETA DRC, Disability Resource Coordinator, I worked with the supported employment provider to brainstorm on what resources could be utilized to best address this individual's challenges and to help him become employed. What we came up with was a list of partners and services that would become his IRT. He was then co-enrolled in our Disability Employment Accelerator grant, our English Language Learner Workforce Navigator pilot program, and in the Job Center. The English Language Learner Navigator, who is co-located at an adult education campus that also hosts a Job Center, became the client's primary case manager, assisting him and his whole family with acculturation and job readiness. The navigator also discovered that he was in need of a high school diploma, although his primary focus was to first obtain employment, to have both income, and to gain confidence in his abilities. SETA's Disability Employment Accelerator job developer helped to arrange an on-the-job training / subsidized employment opportunity for this participant funded by that accelerator grant. Other members of the integrated resource team included the original supported employment provider, vocational rehabilitation, our local regional center, the employer, and me as the SETA disability resource coordinator. As a result of the combination of all of these different resources and supports, this participant was able to complete his OJT, retain his employment, and continue to work with the English Language Learner Navigator at the adult education site to address the need for high school diploma or equivalency. There was also a really dramatic change in the family dynamic and his own personal confidence, now knowing that he is able to work and is going to have future opportunities to complete his high school education as well.
Great, Jennifer. Thank you for that example. It's not only the IRT, but you talked about the relationship building and the resource coordination and, you know, all of these things that we're all kind of talking about at the same time influence each other. So thank you for that. Can you now take us maybe to another roadway and highlight another successful area or strategy in your region?
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at capacity building to kind of switch gears and under promising practices, I want to look at the first action that you have listed in that section, which is to identify national, state, and or local technical assistance that may support your efforts and to expand employment to people with disabilities. And I want to start by saying that in my opinion, there's a kind of a saturation of informational training available in the forms of webinars and training programs and like disability etiquette training, but there can tend to be a lack of application or implementation training, meaning how you're going to put that information to use in the workforce system. The informational trainings are a great place to start to build a bedrock for that implementation training, but shouldn't be seen as enough on its own to support actual systemic change. Disability etiquette training is an essential piece of that informational training to offer to all staff. Here at Sacramento, we work with an organization called Pacific ADA that provides in-person disability etiquette training to all staff, including our job coaches and front desk staff. They are a regional resource in our area that we were referred to by the Job Accommodation Network, or JAN, and there's probably an equivalent organization in areas across the country. But a great place to start for application and implementation training, in my opinion, is this roadmap, where the questions and actions begin to lay out actual implementation strategies. Other resources for this type of training include disability services agencies, cross-training with vocational rehabilitation and regional centers not only serves as a great resource for information and strategies for serving individuals with disabilities, but also may be a good way to start developing that new partnership. It's also important to have some kind of mechanism in place to ensure that the training provided is really going to good use. In Sacramento, we decided to put a work group in place for ongoing training opportunities and to basically develop a pool of experts in this service area that can serve as a great resource for participants, but also as mentors in their respective job centers, assisting other staff in better serving individuals with disabilities as well. The work group creates an ongoing structure for funneling information and implementation strategies out into the field. This group discusses successes and challenges in the field, potential best practices, training needs for the work group and for staff out in the field, and new programs, resources, or initiatives. To create the work group, SETA chose to survey for interested staff instead of assigning or requiring participation to ensure that there would be ongoing commitment to the work group's efforts. This call out to our job centers led to about 10 job coaches joining the work group, representing 7 different job centers throughout Sacramento County. The work group is led by me as the Disability Resource Coordinator, and that position was initially funded by the Disability Employment Initiative, which gave us a great opportunity to start these efforts. But even as that funding ended, these efforts have been continued due to management recognizing the value of the work group, due to the strength of the group that had become accustomed to convening on a quarterly basis, the continued interest in skill development in this area, and the camaraderie developed between team members. Some of the subjects discussed over the years in this work group have included ticket to work, reasonable accommodations, disability initiatives, brainstorming on ways to improve programmatic access, presentations from partner organizations, cross-training, and a review of disability resources. Utilizing this Inclusive Career Pathways Roadmap is going to be a topic at one of our upcoming work group meetings, as Michelle mentioned.
Great, Jennifer. Thank you so much for all of those examples. Great. Let's actually move to another driver. How about to the employer connections? Pepper, I'm going to come back to you. Can you share one of the sub-drivers here that you really feel is pretty critical to inclusive career pathways, and why?
One of the areas that I've looked at extensively is apprenticeship or on-the-job training. And probably the biggest reason for that is because I've seen it open so many doors. Mostly what I look at when I look at it is the importance of building a relationship to include trust with individual. This action, this single action alone is something that is worth its weight in gold. The more you know about the person, the better you're able to actually serve them. The second thing would be to build a relationship with employers, employment services, or employment service teams or agencies. This one simple thing, it's very simple, but it's complex, but it can make a difference. It could possibly be the difference between success and failure. And the third thing I'd like to, for you to understand about the program is to have built-in OJT or apprenticeships. These programs that have built-in leverage like OJTs could possibly make the difference in a client getting a position. And then additionally, OJTs allow employers to see how the client will fit into a working environment. Excuse me. I'd like to give an example of a young man that was positive that he could do a particular job. He was positive that he could work in manufacturing. And so he set out to prove himself. And in the process, it allowed the employer to get to know the client and the client's work ethics. It allowed the client excuse me again, to experience the transition into employment. It provided periodic worksite performance evaluations which reveal expectations from both parties. It allowed for corrective actions. It allowed for interface and interaction between the client and the employer, and it built trust and good employer and employee relationship. This young man, after 8 weeks of being on an internship, did not get hired. So evaluating the situation, because of the knowledge that I had about the person, I was able to use DEI funding to extend his internship. This extension allowed the employer to better evaluate for himself the attributes of the client, which brought about a positive outcome. The client has now been employed for over a year, and the company is still very happy with their decision. One other example I'd like to give you about a program called Manufacturing Careers Internship Program, MCIP. This program is an industrial-driven program designed to help employers find and hire youth adults interested in manufacturing. This program has been a big draw for youth with disabilities as well as without. The program offers a 4-week boot camp, OSHA training, forklift certification, manufacturing tours, financial literacy, resume review, mock interviewing, and performance evaluation. The program is so strong that we have roughly 25% of the job seekers are people with disabilities. There is a 8-week internship that's involved here, and there's 100% placement with this internship. There's 75 to 80% placement rate after the internship, and 20 to 25% are given assistance with different job placement or post-secondary education. OJT has a convincing place with showing employers and potential employees what both entities have to offer. This program is good for any industry because it exposes youth to the diversity of people and the career paths.
Great success stories, Pepper. Thank you for sharing those. And, you know, every person that I interviewed in every state that I met with also talked about the significance of OJTs, work tryouts, internships, apprenticeships. You know, if people with disabilities get these opportunities, there are more positive outcomes. Thank you for sharing that. We have 2 other roadways to go down, and I'm going to turn to Laura. You and your team have provided national technical assistance to probably every state across the country over the years around expanding accessibility and equal opportunity in employment. So can you bring us to the 2 last roadways, accessibility and youth, and kind of give us, you know, what rises to the top in those roadways for you, Laura?
Great. Thanks, Janie, and hello, everyone. Yeah, when I looked at these 2 roadways, I did look at from that lens, and I'm going to highlight just a few of the things that we have learned from working with disability employment demonstration projects across the country, including Pepper and the CEDA area, and what we've learned to address the needs of youth and adults across the country. So I'm going to start with the accessibility roadway. Through the disability demonstrations, we've learned that in order to work towards physical communication and program access, AJCs can't do it alone, and I know I'm not saying anything new to anyone, but they need to tap into the expertise of the wide network of resources at national, regional, state, and local levels in order to better understand the challenges and accommodation solutions for a wide-ranging customer base. And some of these challenges could include lack of knowledge of assistive technology, accommodations, disability agency partners, and necessary support services and models, including customized career pathways for individuals with significant disabilities. And a stop at this roadside can really help you find tools and resources to address many of those areas. So when you click on the accessibility roadway sign, I love that it says at the top, learn how to improve physical and programmatic access, opening doors to career pathways programs for people with disabilities and others who face barriers to employment. To me, that's really a nice image and context in which to embrace this work. By taking this journey, you're helping to increase access or open doors to those who otherwise might not have that opportunity to participate in a career pathway. And I think that's pretty cool. Accessibility covers key drivers such as accommodations, AJC certification, assistive technology, and WIOA Section 188, and these are all great and necessary to truly promote access. So following the directions of the accessibility roadway will provide you with the tools for your toolbox to help ensure an inclusive career pathway through promoting equal access and opportunity, helping to open doors for all customers to enter a career pathway. And so now I'm going to turn to youth with disabilities. And we do know that there have been a lot of efforts taken to help improve employment opportunities for people with disabilities, but research does continue to suggest that youth with disabilities are less likely than their non-disabled peers to graduate from high school, attend and complete four-year colleges and universities, and be employed. So the Youth with Disabilities roadway includes 4 key drivers: financial literacy, guideposts for success, partnerships, and work-based learning to help address some of these challenges. And when you click on this roadway, it states at the top, learn about proven approaches and strategies for serving youth with disabilities across systems, which result in improved work-based learning experiences, financial literacy, and partnerships that support employment outcomes. And Sarah started it. Chris Button and Rebecca and Janie and all have said, the cool thing about this roadmap, it's leading you to proven approaches and strategies so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's key. It's providing you with a guide. So with youth with disabilities, the guideposts for success and other key drivers include educational and career development interventions for your toolbox that can help you make a positive difference in the lives of all youth you are serving, including youth with disabilities, through an inclusive and integrated approach to gaining a career pathway. So I want to go through those quickly, but I will say one thing as I can. 17 years we've been providing national training and TA to the field. And when I look at this, I feel this is the legacy. It includes a lot of what we've learned and what we've seen in the field. And we've always wondered, how do we translate this to the larger workforce system? And while we have done, a lot of different things, you've heard it, when you look at this, it's amazing. It really is that guide, that roadmap that can help you to have a more inclusive, integrated career pathway so everybody has an opportunity. So thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura, and thank you to all of our panel members today. Great insight, good examples of action that can be taken to make change happen. So thank you, and I'm going to turn it back over to Rebecca.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you to all the panelists. That was just such great information. So we have one more speaker before we wrap up. We want to introduce Felipe Lully with the Rehabilitation Services Administration at the U.S. Department of Education. And Felipe, can you talk to us about your 4 Inclusive Career Pathways projects and how they might use the roadmap?
Of course, I would be happy to, Rebecca.
Thank you.
So I'm the project officer for the Career Pathways for individuals with disabilities. It's a program funded by the Rehabilitation Services Administration, or RSA. It involves the state vocational rehabilitation agencies, or VR agencies, of Georgia, Kentucky, Nebraska, and Virginia, and it goes through September 2020. So we're in our 4th year right now. The basic purpose of CPID, the acronym short, is to bring the promise of career pathways within WIOA to individuals with disabilities. So CPID is inclusive by its very nature, from birth, you might say. Now the roadmap provides a one-stop treasure trove of resources for CPID, in the words of one CPID grantee. Another grantee used the term treasure chest. Another grantee simply said, wow, because of the huge amount of wonderful resources. Having such resources in one place is important for CPID grantees because of the large number and variety of partners with whom they work. The resources in the work roadmap help provide direction and a unifying perspective for both the grantee and the partners. Also, the roadmap may provide practical information for future internal VR trainings or even for co-trainings involving both VR and the CPID partners. That, in a nutshell, is a very brief description of the program and the potential benefit of the roadmap for our partners. for our grantees.
No, that's great. Thank you, Felipe. Could you also maybe talk for a minute about how you think the roadmap might be helpful to vocational rehabilitation staff, beyond your 4 grantees and their programs and supporting the people that they serve in Career Pathways programs?
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. So, yeah, this is in the same way that the roadmap is good for our grantees. I think that it would be also helpful for other state VR agencies that may be interested in developing or enhancing their own career pathway programs on behalf of individuals with disabilities. So I do encourage all to take time to explore the resources in the roadmap and to consider using the roadmap in conjunction with the lessons learned and practices emerging from the other career pathway-oriented programs, such as CPAD, but also DEI, et cetera. What we also recommend is that you take a look at the websites for the CPAD grantees that appear, I think should be appearing now.
Yes.
These websites
on the screen.
provide highlights of each project and the contact information for each project lead. Because exploring these websites and speaking with the project leads may offer valuable insights for both the CPAD participant but also for other VR agencies to complement or that complements the valuable information offered in each of the road signs of the roadmap. And let me give you a couple of examples. Because time is short, and so I can be brief here. But under the Youth with Disabilities roadmap, one example of what CPAD is doing that complements what's in the roadmap is innovative outreach strategies involving social media and appealing apps available from the App Store, et cetera. And these apps provide, for example, financial literacy, budgeting, and other pre-employment skills, but they're also fun. And again, one of the issues that the agencies face is actually engaging youth and students and convincing them to work with VR and to pursue career goals. So these apps and social media campaigns have been very effective in that regard. Under Employee Connections, our grantees have engaged in a variety of business engagement strategies that have yielded successful pre-apprenticeship, apprenticeship, customized employment, and work-based learning opportunities involving labor unions and employers such as Hershey Corporation and the Virginia Manufacturers Association, and also Connected to that is the National Manufacturers Association. Under the Partnerships Roadmap, the very first thing that CPAD grantees did was actively engage with their respective statewide or regional career pathway councils and workforce development boards to raise the visibility of individuals with disabilities within the workforce system. So those experiences will be very valuable to many. At the state level, CPAD grantees then engaged in intensive systems alignment and resource mapping activities with the partners across the workforce development system. At the local or regional levels, or even on the individual level, grantees have expanded career pathways opportunities, including co-enrollment and work-based learning for individuals with disabilities through partnerships with state education agencies, career and technical education institutions, adult education programs, and many others. I could go on, but I think time is, the bell is beckoning, so I will give it back to Rebecca.
Yeah, no, that's so useful and actually highlights the fact that we would love to be able to continue to add examples. Again, we want to keep it from being overwhelming, but certainly some of the examples that you just shared, Felipe, are other you know, really promising practices that other jurisdictions, other workforce development professionals might want to use. So we so appreciate you doing that. So if we could go back to the PowerPoint again, we just wanted to let people know that there's another webinar a week from today called Achieving Equal Access and Opportunity, Requirements and Promising Practices. You'll have noticed that one of the resources that was on some of the pages was a Section 188 Disability Reference Guide, and that was developed several years ago. It's just been updated, and we're going to be releasing it with that webinar, again, with lots of examples from what states and local workforce regions are doing to promote equal opportunity and comply with the non-discrimination requirements of WIOA. So we encourage you to join that, that webinar. We have a slide with all the ways that you can stay in touch with the LEAD Center, but I wanted to save the last couple minutes for Chris Button and any closing comments that she has, and to once again thank all the panelists. I'm going to go back and listen to this again because there were so many ideas that went by way too quickly. But Chris, could you close us out here?
Yeah, Rebecca and everyone else, thank you so much. I'm going to take a word that one of Felipe's grantees said to him, and that is, wow. I just have so many compliments and congratulations to our speakers who helped develop this product, to Rebecca and Jamie and all of our LEAD staff for release of this absolutely amazing resource. I think it was especially helpful to hear from our state partners today and also our federal colleagues on their reflections about how useful this resource is going to be for them and their various stakeholders. So thank you, Rebecca and LEAD and everyone, for an absolutely amazing webinar today. I can't wait to go back and discover more as I go through the roadmap myself and look at every single resource. So thank you.
Now, thank you, Chris, and thank you again to Jamie and all of our presenters, to Sarah and Felipe and our Illinois and California partners, and thank you for all the participants for listening to the webinar. Bye now.